Friends, this is Pastor Benny Tate, and I want to welcome you to our Leads Club podcast. I truly believe that every person wants and needs to grow and develop, and this is a podcast that is simply about you becoming the best version of you that you can be. Today, it's a special day. I'm with a dear friend of mine. One of the closest friends of mine up on the planet is Jeff Daws. Jeff, I'm glad you're back with me today.
Pastor Benny, what an honor it is to be here hosting again with you. We had such a wonderful time last time, so I asked could I come back, and and they said yes, of course. So thank you so much for that. But Pastor Benny, you know, our last podcast was so well received. Of people sharing this format. They're saying how much they love this format with you just sharing from your heart. You know, you're one of the greatest leadership gurus that I know in the church world, and that you're always teaching, but it's so wonderful to hear you talk.
Well, you're kind, Jeff. You really are kind, and I truly, my passion is to help others. It was a great day in my life, Jeff, when I learned that it helps me to help you.
Well, you have been a great help to me and thousands of other pastors, and that's what your legacy is going to be, is not just Rock Springs, but also how you've loved pastors. And, you know, as we kick off this episode, Pastor Benny, I think that's one of the things that all of us are so desperate to know is, you know, how did you begin your journey of growth with yourself? I mean, we know that the organization will never outgrow the leader, so you've had to grow. And so as we kick this episode off today, I'd like to just ask that question. What do you think it has been in your life? How did you grow so much? Maybe was there along the way some things that you learned that helped propel you forward? What are some of those things?
You know, Jeff, I remember years ago, I was a young man, high energy, low IQ. I mean, literally, I wasn't groomed to be in ministry. I wasn't, I didn't think I had a lot of abilities. But I was at this conference, and a pastor preached on commitment. And I made myself forward, and I knelt in the altar. And basically, Jeff, I said, God, you can have all of me. You can have all of me. And I remember that old gentleman prayed over me, and he laid his hands on me. And I was talking to him after the service. I'd never met him before. And he said, young man, you need to connect with my son. I said, I need to connect with your son. He said, yes, you do. I said, who is your son? He said, well, you've probably never heard of him. His name is John Maxwell.
Wow.
At that time, a lot of people hadn't heard of John Maxwell. And so he said, connect with my son, John Maxwell. His name was Dr. Melvin Maxwell. And so I connected with John Maxwell. And I started growing, and I started developing, and I started developing confidence, and I started learning. More. And, I've just been on this lifelong quest to learn. I don't ever want to be Jeff. I don't want to be a know-it-all. I'm certainly not a know-it-all. But I do want to be a learn-it-all. I believe that every man or woman is my superior in some way. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that, they're my superior in some way. I can learn from them. And as I said in my elementary way, I want to find people that are doing it and get my pail under their wheel and grow and develop and be the best version of me that I can possibly be.
So let's back this up, Pastor Benny. Mm-hmm. So you've been the pastor of Rock Springs for 35 or 36?
35 years.
35 years, and you was a pastor before that. So this had to be about 40 years ago.
It was.
So take us back 40 years ago. Okay, so you meet Mr. Maxwell, Sr., and then you meet John Maxwell. Well, just meeting someone doesn't make you a great leader. So what was it that you started to do? Like, what was some of the very first things that you started doing that you noticed that started bringing growth in your life?
Well, first of all, discipline, Jeff. Discipline is the gift that we give to ourselves. And so I started developing some disciplines in my life. Discipline is the ability to tell yourself no. And as a leader, we have to tell ourselves no to the good things so we can tell ourselves yes to the best things. And so I think many times when we think of discipline, we think of it in a negative connotation, but actually discipline is great. It's the gift that we give ourselves in every capacity of our lives.
So thinking of discipline, going back again now about 35, 40 years, what was one of the things that you first started saying, okay, I've got to start this or stop that? Can you remember any of that?
Oh, sure. I can remember some of the things. One thing, Jeff, that will be the minister's greatest battle. This will be, in my opinion, the greatest battle that would not only the minister, this is the greatest battle that most leaders will have, is your private time with God. That has to become a discipline in your life. As a leader, Jeff, 50% of the men and women that start in ministry 5 years from now will not be in ministry.
Wow.
50%. What is going to sustain people in ministry is simply your time with God. Your time with God. Martin Luther said, he who prays well studies well. You're preaching, Jeff, and you do a great job preaching, and our listeners do. Many that I know that are watching, that told me they're watching, they're great men of God. But your preaching will come out of the overflow. Your best preaching will come out of the overflow of what God is doing in your life. And God can't do something in us if he's not doing something through us. So I would say to that pastor, even to this day, Jeff, just being very practical, I have a place where I meet with God. I have a place each morning where I meet with God. It's a discipline. It's a discipline in my life. Just practical disciplines that I'm going to be a giver. I am going to be a giver. I want to live my life as a giver. I believe givers always have more than enough. I believe takers never have enough.
Right.
The personality of a church, I'm convinced that pastors will come sometimes say to me, Brother Benny, I need to develop a culture. And I'm thinking, well, brother, you've already got a culture. It may not be the culture that you want, but you've got a culture. But somebody says, well, I want this type of culture. Well, as a leader, be that type of culture. You say, I want our people to be generous. Well, have you led them to be generous? Right. Have you exemplified that type of culture in your personal life? So we just, Barbara and I just sat down early on and said, these are some disciplines that we want to have. And I tried to incorporate those.
What's so amazing is, you've been the pastor here again 35 years. God has blessed Rock Springs to thousands of people every weekend. Your influence across the nation is amazing. And it's amazing. We're sitting here today, and I ask you, what is the first discipline that you still practice today? And it's amazing how you said reading the Bible and praying.
Jeff, I practiced that discipline this morning. It's the power source for any individual's life. Jeff, it's been something that it's been a struggle. If you said, like, Pastor Benny, is your prayer time, what would you say to the people that are watching? I would say to the people that are watching, it's been a struggle in my life, Jeff.
Yes.
Because, Jeff, at 30, Jeff, I had this quest probably to be a great preacher. Jeff, it left me empty. It left me empty. At 40, I had this quest to build this church, this great church, and, da-da-da. Jeff, about 10 years ago at 50, I decided that I really wanted to know God, that I want to know Him. And you know what's been amazing, Jeff? as you give the Redeemer your time, he redeems your time.
Wow.
You'll find as you're putting God first and you're having your private time with him, it's amazing how much more you will get accomplished. And God taught me this. He actually taught me this through tithing. And, Barbara and I started tithing. I would like to tell you, Jeff, from the day I became a Christian, I was a tither. I wasn't. I wasn't. Jeff, I started tithing, and I found out it works. I found out that God can do more. God can do more with 10%. He can make it go a lot farther than I can.
Right.
And God showed me, if I can do that with money, what makes you think I can't do that with time?
Wow.
And when you give God the best part of your day, it's amazing. And I know, Jeff, you do this. It's amazing what you will get accomplished. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's what's going to sustain you in ministry. I believe it's what's going to, when 1,700 pastors are walking away every month, what's going to sustain you is your time with God. You've got to take and your motivation can't be needs. Somebody said, Pastor Benny, my motivation is the needs in my church. No. Because if your motivation for praying is the needs in your church, when things are going pretty well, you won't pray.
Right. That's right.
Jeff, your motivation has to be your relationship with God. Mm-hmm. It's your it's what's constant. Jeff, through the years, I've had church people. I've had them come. I've had them go.
Yep.
I've had staff members come and go.
Yep.
I've had some that I thought would be with me in the end, and they left me. Sometimes it was a good situation, sometimes not so good. But Jeff, that relationship with him is what's been constant.
So Pastor Benny, here we are talking about the greatest disciplines of your life, and the first thing that you've said is your time with God, and in which I do believe that is the most important. Would you say, Pastor Benny, everything else builds on that?
Everything else builds on your time with God. I think it builds, I think it helps in all of your relationships. Your relationship with God. Jeff, and when I'm talking about your time with God, I take people through a little word. I talk to them about pray. Mm-hmm. Pray. And I use it in my time with God. First of all, that P stands for pause. Jeff, many times we just need to pause. We just need to be still and know that he's God. Put that phone away. But get away from all the distractions. The Bible says, and Jesus departed into a solitary place and there prayed. Just pause. And then the R stands for rejoice. Jeff, you just start thinking about how great he is, and how good he is, and Jeff, how much we have to be thankful for. And Jeff, that A stands for ask. Mm-hmm. We have not because you ask not. We start asking him, God, would you do this? God, would you help this person? God, would you do that? You say that's the end. No, there's a Y. And that Y stands for yield. Mm. And what I mean by yield, that means just being still and saying, there, God, what do you want to say to me? Mm. See, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue.
Right.
It's a dialogue. And I think your time with God, Jeff, when I'm not having the time that I should with God, mine and Barbara's relationship's not near as good.
That's exactly right.
I will promise you, it's not near as good as when I'm having my time in my relationship with God. Right. And my relationship with others is not as good if I'm not having my time with
Pastor Benny, what maybe a lot of your listeners don't know is that you're not a very patient man.
And it's a struggle.
And to say, the reason I bring that up is because I've traveled with you a lot. I know that some people say, well, Pastor Benny is hyper. And I've heard you tell the joke about Barbara saying you get cold medicine, and how could you tell because you're so hyper? But what I'm saying is that even though you are hyper, still, you make, this is the discipline.
It is,
Like
Jeff.
it's not normal. It's not natural for you to be still. And it's not natural for anyone. Like there's some people that are more calm than others, but you're on the other side of that extreme. And so it really is a discipline.
It is, Jeff. It is. It's a discipline. And you know, you have to tell yourself, I'm not doing something to myself. I'm doing something for myself. What you want, you have to give. Somebody says, well, I want energy. Well, you've got to give energy. That means I want more energy. That may mean going to the gym. That means because you have to give what you want. And the good things of life will come from discipline. And what begins, Jeff, by desire will always have to be maintained by discipline. It is discipline, and you reap the benefits of those disciplines on the other side.
So we've talked about, okay, the scripture and prayer. We've talked about tithing. And it's amazing how I'm sure your listeners are like, wow, you know what? They're talking about the things that we should do. Yeah, these are the things we know to do.
Right.
But they're the first things on the building plate. So after that, now let's get to, okay, what were some other disciplines that you started practicing that helped you grow? So we know the spiritual aspect of reading the Bible, praying, tithing. So now let's go into more of a practical.
Sure. Jeff, here's what I would say to the person out there. I am 60 years old, pastored the same church for 35 years. Here's what I would say to our listeners. You can get anything you want in life if you help others get what they want. What I would say to our listeners today, I would say especially to pastors, don't look to climb. Get over this climbing stuff. Quit trying. If I get here, can position myself to get there. If you're in the will of God, you're at the apex. If you're in the will of God, you say, well, Pastor, I'm a middle school pastor right now. But wait, if that is the will of God for you, that is the apex.
Amen.
So here's a catch. Don't look to climb, Jeff. Look to connect. Don't when you encounter people, it's not a deal. Can I climb over Jeff, and can I have a larger ministry, and can I have a bigger church, and can I have a greater online following? No. Look to connect. How can I connect with Jeff? How can we connect and come together and be better for the kingdom? You remember when David was taking the cheese and the bread down there for the brothers. You know, the older brother approached him and said, "What are you doing down here? You little nosy runt. What are you doing?" Yeah. Now look here. He's standing here. They're having this confrontation. The enemy's over here. And I'm thinking, you guys are having this. Both of your enemies is out here. It's Goliath.
Right.
And Jeff, we need to realize we got to connect. Our enemy's not one another.
Right.
Our enemy's the devil.
Pastor Benny, before we conclude this podcast, what are some of the best ways to connect?
Some of the best ways to connect is simply express care for other people. You know, somebody said, I think it was Oswald Sanders said it best, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you've got to look, love is not a feeling, love is an action. We got to love people, but you've got to respond. There's actions, just practical things you can do to let people know that you care. Jeff, it may be a handwritten card, it may be a call, it may be a small gift, but just practical things. Jeff, I go to bed every night and thinking about what can I do tomorrow to help people. What I'm saying, Jeff, I encourage you, just love people one at a time. Just love people one at a time. Someone said, well, I can't do it for everybody. Well, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone.
Yes.
And if you keep that attitude, you'll never do anything. but focus on other people. And when we give flowers to other people, it truly does leave a fragrance in our hands.
You know, that was the greatest thing. Like after I come and saw you that week, as we talked about on the last podcast, for the first time, I remember getting the card in the mail. I remember that you reached out to me, and I thought, man, and I remember how you made me feel. And so it's changed the game for me.
Sure.
Because you have taught me through what you have done for me, I've tried to do for others. And the one thing that you taught me, Pastor Benny, was you said, you know, just like you said, every day I ask myself, who can I add value to today? Who can I help today? Who can I do something special for today? And sowing the seeds, not focusing on reaping, has changed everything. Well, Pastor Benny, again, you have this leadership book coming out. Here we are, just a few months away. Tell us about it.
Well, Jeff, I wrote the book Defy the Odds, Unlimited, a trilogy. The book's coming out. It's entitled Yes, You Can. It's a book on leadership, but it's a different style. If you said, like, Pastor Benny, is it for pastors? Well, a pastor would be a part of it, but just as much as this book would be for a pastor, it would be for the housewife.
Yes.
Just as much as this book would be for the pastor, it would be for the construction worker. It would be for the school teacher. It's a book entitled Yes, You Can. And the premise of the book is this, is God has equipped all of us to lead in some capacity. We're all leaders. Mm-hmm. Somebody says, well, Pastor Benny, are leaders born or made? Both. We're all born, by the way. Amen?
Right.
But we're developed. We're developed. And it's just a book on how you can apply some principles that will make you a better husband, will make you a better wife, will make you a better CEO of the company, that will make you a better manager. It's just a practical book on leadership.
So when is that book coming out?
It comes out the 1st of November.
1st of November. Well, Pastor Benny, we're wrapping up here, but we're about 2 weeks away from Easter.
Yes, sir.
Tell me what will you be doing to prepare these next 2 weeks to prepare your people for Easter?
Well, one of the things, Jeff, that I do every year that I would encourage pastors to do is the Holy Week. On that day of the Holy Week, whether it's Monday on through Holy Week, I do a recording and we send it out of what actually happened. What happened on the Monday before Friday? What happened on the Tuesday? What happened on Wednesday? What happened on Thursday? What happened on Friday? And each day I record these of this is what happened in the life of Jesus. And and let me tell you the hook, what I do. I record those, but I always end them by challenging them. Who are you bringing with you this Easter? Who are you bringing to church? That squeaky wheel, Jeff, gets the grease.
Yes.
And it's just a practical reminder for your people that Easter is coming up. The other thing I would encourage, I would just encourage, the pastor to talk about what he's doing. The greatest leadership principle I ever learned is monkey see, monkey do. Mm-hmm. And we don't teach what we don't know, and we don't lead where we don't go. And just challenging your people, to invite their friends. Encourage them with things like, Jeff, it's the easiest Sunday of the year to get somebody to come to church with you.
Right.
It's not the toughest Sunday.
Right.
It's the easiest Sunday.
Right. So Pastor Ben, you get up and you share stories about how you're inviting your neighbors and people in the community. So that's what you mean when you say share what you're doing.
Or I might do this, Jeff. I might use the illustration. Helen here in the congregation, her first Sunday she came was on Easter of 5 years ago. She was invited by somebody in the church. She gave her life to Christ. There's nothing like those stories that are right there before our eyes.
Pastor Benny, as we conclude this podcast, again, it's just been an honor to be able to host this with you. The Leads podcast is so powerful. If someone wanted to get a hold of you or contact you, how would they do that?
They would simply go to bennytate.info. bennytate.info. You can reach us there. All of our information's there. And Jeff, we would just be delighted. We'd just be delighted to hear from people. You know what's amazing, Jeff? We sat down right here. We've been talking probably 25, 30 minutes. We didn't discuss it. Before this conversation, we didn't discuss what we was going to talk about.
No.
We just sat down as two brothers, and I love the podcast for that reason. It's just, we just sat down and we just let it come natural.
We should call this podcast Benny Tate Raw.
It is raw. I have no notes. I have nothing. We have no plan. It's raw.
Let me ask you this question, Pastor Benny, as we conclude here. If the pastor wanted to get the notes of what you do the week before Easter, could they reach out to BennyTate.com?
Unequivocally. If they reached out to us, I would be honored to give them anything and everything we have, Jeff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Again, we're so excited and so honored that you would be a part of this podcast. Pastor Benny, thank you for allowing me to come and be a part of this. God is using your life in such a special way, and we're just honored that you would take this time to share with us.
Jeff, it's a real privilege. Thank you for being here. And hey, I hope to see all of you soon. I'm excited. I'm excited about this podcast, and we've got more content to share with you. And you just stay connected.
And by the way, if this podcast has been helpful to you, it would just be an honor if you would share that with your friends to help them. Pastor Benny, that's why we're doing this podcast. That's why you started it, is that you wanted to be a help to pastors. So it would just be a great help if the folks would just share this with others.
Jeff, I would love it. That's why we do it. We want it to be a help and resource for people no matter where you are. So if you would be so kind to share this, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it.